Elizabeth Moore, the Foster Care and Community Engagement Coordinator with Marion County Children's Services, and welcome to another episode of our podcast. We are still in the series of the foundational aspects of every unit of our agency, and with me today I have two guests from our placement unit. I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Liz, if you want to start.
I'm Elizabeth Arthur.
And what do you do?
I am 30 Days to Family Specialist.
Okay.
And I'm Tony Carbetta, and I'm the Kinship Support Caseworker.
All right, so we're going to dive into some of the details of what that means. I'd really like maybe for Tony, if you can explain your role first for us.
So my job is to approve and do like the investigation for home studies for our kinship providers. So we have two options when a child is removed from their parents. You know, they either go into a kinship placement or a foster placement. And you know, the goal is to keep them with family. So my job is to go in and maybe approve the house and the people that are going to be taking care of the kiddos that are family or friends rather than placing them in foster care.
Okay. And Liz, Elizabeth?
So this is a new program that the agency just started using. So my job is to, once kids are placed in foster care, I have 30 days to find kinship placement for them, kinship supports for them, backup placements, and kind of do the same thing that Tony does, just for it to be a 30 days case, they actually have to be in agency custody and foster care.
So I've been really excited about this episode because I don't think that everyone in the community knows exactly what we do as far as kinship services. And part of that is because a lot of what we're doing in kinship is still relatively new. So Tony, maybe you can kind of help give us a little bit of information about how we started, because your role, which was really where Liz was first, came before 30 days. So maybe you can kind of help people understand how we started along this path of kinship.
So I am actually going to defer to Liz because Liz was the grant. She helped write the application for the grant for the kinship casework support. But I think it's been 2 years now, almost, or right about 2 years, that this position was created so that we can help get our kiddos out of foster care. But we also realized that there's such a need during initial removals, which can happen in both intake and ongoing. It doesn't necessarily happen at the beginning of a case. That we don't want kids to go into foster care because it is, as we know, statistically harder to get them out of foster care once they go in. And so when our goal is reunification as an agency, not just in Marion, but in the state of Ohio, making sure that we have those kinship options was our biggest need. And it used to be that the caseworker did the home study, and we realized that we had so many home studies that needed to be done that we had created with, I think, a couple of other agencies in Marion County, this position, my position, which used to be Liz's position, so that we could make sure all of those home studies were being done a little quicker.
Yeah, so I think Adam H. was pretty instrumental in helping that position happen here. And that really was a great way to kind of kick off. Not that we weren't doing kinship stuff.
Correct.
But obviously now we see a lot more kinship stuff, including, I'm going to probably say it wrong, is it called KPI? Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so you want to share with people what KPI is? So, because we're still kind of in your role with that, right?
Right. Well, I believe the KPI actually comes after legal custody is granted.
Okay.
But we also have a kinship funding program during the temporary custody and safety plan process. So what that is when kinship providers, you know, aunt, uncle, grandparent, family friend is caring for a kiddo and they don't have a bed, or the kiddo doesn't have clothes, or maybe the family needs food, we have an opportunity through a grant through JFS to help them with that. So people come to me and say, hey, you know, we need groceries this week, and I'm able to give them a grocery voucher. There is a limited amount of that per 12 months, but for the most part, we utilize it really well to make sure that we're supporting those kinship families.
So I really love kinship services because I really think, even just in the conversation of some of the really, again, basic information of what we're talking about with kinship, we're already seeing a lot of connection with the community. We see that engagement with other resources. You know, we've already mentioned Adam H, JFS. That made me think of the newer program, the Be the Village coalition, where they're also trying to provide some kinship services as well. They do a lot with foster parents, but really I think that's where we see a lot of community come together. The support is obviously super important for bio families, but we really see it also for those kinship families. So let's go ahead and move over then to Liz. If you want to give us a little bit more understanding as far as 30 days, how 30 Days to Family came to the agency, and you know, maybe if you can go a little bit deeper into some of that information of the details of what you're doing.
So this position is also a funded position. 30 Days to Family. They just added our county and one other county, so there's only 17 counties in Ohio that have this program. We are a pilot county is what they call it, but the whole process was a lot. We had to fill out a lengthy application, give them some of our statistics as far as numbers and stuff like that to make sure that this program was a need in Marion County. The last 3 or 4 years we've been super focused on kinship, and we have made a lot of progress, but we were still seeing that need, especially for kids that have been lingering in foster care. So we were chosen, and then we started implementing the program like after the training and everything in June. And then I just got my first case July 30th.
So can you maybe tell everybody a little bit about like what are some of the things that you have now since you are 30 Days to Family caseworker?
So one of the biggest things is a database program that we have. With that program you can put a name, date of birth, address, as much information as you have for a person, and then it will pull up pretty much anybody associated with that person, relatives, neighbors, anybody that's some sort of association. So that really helps with this program, because then I can reach out to those people and say, hey, we're working with this family. Would you be interested in either taking placement of this child, being some sort of a support for this child? That way they have, you know, that community family ties. So that's one of the biggest perks of the 30 Days to Family program.
So one of the things that I've been telling people, like when we do our child abuse and neglect training, is that while it's probably not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but there's a possibility with you having this kind of a database that they could get a call and have like some long lost relative that maybe they didn't really know they had a connection with, and like you just said, they can make the decision to even just be a support and to have that connection. So that's awesome. So we've talked on some of the previous episodes about the increases in intakes and caseload sizes when we did our intake episode, and then last week we spoke with ongoing. How does that have an impact really on like what you guys are seeing?
I think that things come in waves. So I can go, so for my process, I get a referral from the caseworker saying, I have this child that's either potentially going to be removed or has been removed or is in foster care, what have you, and we need a home study done for this kinship person. And I can go like a week or 2 weeks and not get one referral. And then like last week I got 10 referrals. And I found another 3 in my mailbox this morning. So it really comes in waves, but like I said before, it's not necessarily just during the intake removal process. I was an ongoing caseworker for 2 years. So a lot of times, unfortunately, we can get a case can go into the ongoing unit when a child is still in the home and then ends up being removed during that process, or during, we can reunify and then later on have to remove again. So it really, I see more referrals because we remove we have more intake referrals. So I think that I do see more referrals coming from the intake unit, but I think almost all of the referrals that I got last week were from ongoing. So
I think that's really important for people to have an understanding that, we're always assessing child safety and risk and how does this situation affect a child. And then we have also had the conversation as well that, some of the drugs that we're seeing people being addicted to are harder drugs, that they carry a higher risk. And so, what we have an understanding of is being clean. Getting clean can be very difficult, and then remaining clean is also very imperative. So so that's great information for people to know. So and maybe if either of you have like a story that you want to share, but what positive impacts have been made at the agency as well as the community level with your guys' roles?
I think the most positive impact is the number of kids in kinship care as opposed to foster care. I mean, even a year ago when I was doing this, our lovely director Jackie loves to run reports, and she would do those every so often, and I was seeing that the kinship and the foster placement numbers were pretty much neck and neck. I actually just ran a report yesterday, and
Jackie's gonna love that.
We have 86 kids still in either foster or purchase care, and we have 127 in kinship. So that number, the kinship number, is climbing, so that's positive. So I think that's one of the biggest changes that I've seen, and we're gonna just get even better. So.
Do you have anything you want?
I think from both the kinship and like an ongoing perspective, when our kiddos are in kinship care, they're more likely to be able to visit like their parents at grandma's house or aunt's house or what have you, and they can supervise those visits. And unfortunately, especially when kids are in out of county placements, they have to visit here at the agency. And while I think our visitation center is great, it's very comfortable. I have seen visitation centers, not necessarily through Children's Services, but it almost feels like a jail visit. And I think our visitation center is super fun. So many toys. I know it's hard right now with COVID, but big comfy couches, it's like you're in the living room of somebody's house, but it's still at an agency, and when we get kids in kinship care, not necessarily always can they visit, especially with some of our parents that are in active addiction, and we have to make sure that they're safe around the kids, but our kids are able to visit where they're more comfortable, and I think that's a little less trauma emotionally on our kiddos, which, that's our job as child safety, and making sure not just that they're physically safe, but that they grow to have a safe mental health as well.
Yeah, I think especially, and obviously a lot of the things that we're talking about, we could start to, go even further into some of this stuff, but talking about child trauma, we understand, we have a total and complete understanding that whether the allegations that we are investigating or not are true, we know that the removal itself, no matter if they're going to kinship or foster, it's a traumatizing experience. And so, yes, kinship will help at least, have a more minimal effect. I mean, it's still traumatizing, but it is still something that we know is important for their mental health. So if you guys have watched either any of the other episodes, I'm getting ready to ask a question that is not on your cheat sheet. So yeah.
Winging it is not cool.
It is, it's good. So what I'll do is I'll let you know the question, and then I'll talk for 1 more minute for everybody, and then you guys can answer. So basically for you guys, what I'd love to know is either what brought you to this field or what made you become passionate and hopeful in this field. So while they're thinking about their answers, I think one thing I want our community to know when we're talking about the kinship stuff, obviously it's super important. We know that it's great to keep kids in familiar places with familiar people. All of that stuff is super vital. The unfortunate truth is that, like Liz said, we still have 80-some kids in foster care, and we do still need foster homes. So I don't want you to watch this and think, oh, they're doing all that work in kinship, then they never need foster parents again. We also are, just seeing a rise when we talk about the increased risk with some of these cases and harder drugs and all of that stuff. That does have a huge major impact on removing kids from their home, unfortunately, in general. So we do still need foster parents, and actually in our next episode we'll talk a little bit with one of our placement caseworkers and recruiting foster families and the work that we do with foster families. So who wants to go first?
I think Liz wants me to go first. So my degree is in criminal justice. I've always been very passionate about the justice system. I worked right out of college at a community corrections nonprofit, and what that nonprofit did was research on previously incarcerated people and how their lives can be more successful, and whether that means jail or prison, or even it's community corrections, so also probation, parole, all of those things. And I learned a lot about how the parents' lives affect the kids. I then moved on to work with human trafficking survivors, local, domestic human trafficking survivors. A lot of people think, taken, and that's not really how human trafficking works in real life. And so I then wanted to do more within my own community, and that's how I ended up here. And I didn't know if I would stay super long because I didn't have a whole lot of history working with kids. I had more history with adults, but since being in Marion County here at Children's Services, I have become more and more passionate about making a difference for the kids of Marion, because the kids of Marion are the future of Marion. And so we can't better our community and make our community stronger and more productive if we aren't focusing on our kids.
I think Children's Services has the right balance when it comes to helping kids, because I also am I want to help kids have a better future, but I don't have a strength in actually working with kids. So it's really cool to see how you can have such a major impact on kids while maybe not offering, which we do some direct support for kids, but
right.
It's mostly wrapping that support around the parents and the family in general. So.
Well, that was really good, and mine's not going to be so good.
A major eye roll.
So this is just where I've always wanted to be. I was a foster kid through Marion County when I was younger, adopted. So this has kind of always been my goal. I've had my kids younger, so it took me a while to get the schooling and stuff I needed, but Marion County is always been my goal to work with the kids and family, and I love the kids, so I like working with kids.
I think that's just as good as mine. That's just as good as mine. You have a personal stake here.
Genuine,
yes.
It's real. That's what people want to know.
Okay.
Why you have a passion to be here, so that's great.
That's my thing.
All right. Well, that wraps it up basically for us when we're talking about our kinship services. Again, we're really just scratching the surface on everything that we do here at the agency. These two ladies work with families day in and day out, and all through the year, so we know that they do a lot more than just the few things that we were able to talk about today. So I'm sure at some point I'll get them back in here and we can talk a little bit more about everything. But I'm super glad that you guys were willing to share with just a little bit of arm twisting. If you have any questions, if you have any information about things that you'd like to hear more about, please feel free to contact me, and as always, I'll put my information down below where you can give us a call, you can send an email. Of course, we're on Facebook and LinkedIn, and we also have our website. So lots of ways that you can contact us, lots of ways to find information about what we're doing here at the agency, and thank you so much for watching.